All right, so hey everybody, welcome to the Be Insightful in Technology podcast, where I'm your host, Shakiria Johnson, also known as Shy, and I'm here to help you gain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to be insightful in technology. So today, I want to have our guest introduce himself so that we can dive deeper into what he does, how he got to where he is at the moment, and then how you can get to that area as well. You know, a few simple tips to help you out. So let's go ahead and get started in today's podcast. All right, so Ravi, I know I want to give you the floor to introduce yourself, tell the people who you are and what you do, so that way we can dive deeper into what it is that you have to offer.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here, Shai. So my name is Ravi Kurani. I am the CEO and founder of a company called Sutro. Sutro, we like to say, is a robotics platform. We're basically a floating lab, is a way to think about it. We make a robot to make sure that people's water is safe. Our first market's actually in swimming pools and spas. But the overall goal of Sutro is to be that anywhere that water touches any application, and you can think about that as like agriculture, right? You use water to grow our plants. We use that in drinking water. We use it in breweries, right? The beer and the wine that we drink has water inside there. And all of this water, when you do use it in any of these applications, it has to be measured to a certain parameter. And that's where Sutro comes in. That's what we built.
So where can the people find you, or where can they find your company? Like website names, LinkedIn, social medias, anything.
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you just search Ravi Kurani, you'll see that I'm the founder of Sutro. If you want to see the actual website or the product that we make, you can go to mysutro.com. That's MY like my, and then SUTRO.com, mysutro.com.
All right, so that's good. So let's talk about, you mentioned that you basically want to get it to wherever water touches to essentially be what filtered, or is it more just ensuring that water is safe to drink, or be in general? So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, if you look at how water is used today, right? Let's take the swimming pool as an example. If you go to a hot tub or a swimming pool, you'll take that little test strip, right? Many of you goes out there, you dip the little test strip inside, take a look at the colors. Is it red? Is it yellow? Is it blue? That's basically what Sutro does, right? Where that test kit, but made autonomous. After you have that information, you usually want to do something to the water, right? You're putting in chlorine, you're putting in acid, you're changing your pH, you're tweaking the water somehow. And what we call that is sense and dispense. So you first got to sense the water, you got to figure out what's going on, and then you can dispense the chemicals to make sure that the water is safe. The other thing to note too, right, is water is different for each application that you use it in. If you're talking about a swimming pool has a lot of chlorine inside there, right? But you don't want to be taking in glasses of water, of that swimming pool water, and drinking it. Nor is that chlorine going to be safe for growing strawberries or growing grapes for wine. And so when you kind of think about water, you have to make sure you understand what it's going to be used for. So that sense and dispense loop that you have is actually core and tuned for that particular thing that you're going to be doing, be it growing strawberries, being in a swimming pool, or drinking that water.
Okay. That seems like something very important for, in general, the environment, because I know a lot of us, we're kind of surrounded by, normal drinking water, normal water that, we can, shower in, take care of ourselves with.
Mm-hmm.
But in other places, it's hard to find.
Yeah.
So do you eventually want to move into helping like those communities that don't have much access to kind of that clean water that could be used, for agriculture, for just general, maintenance of our own bodies?
Yeah, entirely. And I think, we sometimes like to think that even America or the US has clean drinking water. I mean, you have issues like Flint, Michigan, right? There was a lead drinking water problem over there. There was this issue in East Palestine, Ohio, with the big chemical spill, which leaching into the water. There's water problems around the world, and where we actually started off Sutro was with my work in India. So I used to be in India back in 2012, running a small venture capital fund. And this venture capital fund was investing in Indian startups, right? Companies that were in India, and their main focus was helping people who earned less than $2 a day, right? Poverty alleviation. And so these companies had projects like giving solar panels to villagers, or helping farmers with cell phones that don't otherwise get weather information, get text messages from weather to know if it was going to be raining tomorrow, if it was going to be a sunny day. In interviewing, hundreds of companies, what we realized is there was a lot of people that were doing stuff with water filtration, right? The dispense part, the way to fix water, but nobody was doing stuff on what's wrong with water. Nobody was looking at water sensing. And so that's where we initially actually came out with Sutro. The initial prototype was while we were in India to figure out how do we understand if the water is safe to drink, so we can then properly attribute these filters to make sure that we're cleaning up the water later. Probably a really, 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 really dumb thing for a startup to do is to try to sell to the Indian government. They're like riddled with red tape. They're really, really complicated to get through. And so we ended up coming back to the United States, flipping the business model around, and started focusing on swimming pools, because that's where we knew we could start selling a product, making money, and then eventually scale the business to get back to what we wanted to do with the India side of things.
Okay, so alongside with that, do you feel like at this point in time, you can slowly creep back into what your original plan was?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we're actually this year, 2023, I'm going to be launching an initiative called Sutro Labs, which is actually this kind of India project, right? It's taking this technology that we've built at Sutro and then scaling it into these other markets, looking at drinking water problems, looking at agriculture problems. So yeah, 100%. 2023 is the year that we begin to launch into these other markets.
That sounds amazing, to be able to get into essentially the weeds of things for this, because I kind of all the documentaries and everything on Netflix, there's this one that talks about essentially, I guess, sanitation being like a lacking factor in places that need clean water. And when you talk about basically being able to sense like what is wrong with the water, that's one of those things that kind of like, I guess, left my mind, because I really don't think about it on a normal basis. Like I really don't. I kind of just, go to my sink. I have my Brita filter. I fill I
Yeah.
fill up my bottles of water, and I kind of just go on about my day. So I like that a company like yours is being able to bring that to light, to be able to help others see that, hey, there is definitely a lack and we need more support in these areas. So that is really amazing to see. So let me ask you, so how did you find your passion into this, and like what steps did you take as you kind of grew along your journey into, I would say, the water sensing business?
Yeah, I think it actually started off at actually a very early age, right? My parents were immigrants from India that came here. And so I grew up in the outer areas of Los Angeles, actually in the desert of Riverside, really close to Palm Springs and Coachella. And every summer, right, my dad, my mom, we would go on these trips back to go visit our family in India. And I always just kind of had this drive to go back and go back to India and go back and basically travel. I kind of got the travel bug at a very early age, because I didn't stay in the US all the time, right? I was traveling back to India. We'd always have these layovers. Whenever we made a layover, we would always stop there for a little bit. And seeing that, right, kind of gave me this urge to want to travel. And then as I began traveling and I entered into undergraduate, where I started studying mechanical engineering, I don't want to just be like everybody else and, go and have like an engineering career and, sit at a desk and work all day. And so I ended up creating with my buddy this program called ISAGI, which was International Service and Global Impact. And this was back in like undergraduate, right? So I wasn't even thinking about Sutro. There was no water stuff yet. We were doing projects in Peru and Brazil back in like in college, and trying to figure out how to give the urban area in Peru, in Lima, Peru, access to computers, right? So we could help educate people in the city so they can talk to their grandparents that lived in the villages. Or in Brazil, we were trying to figure out how to make a mobile medical clinic, right? Because we were working at an orphanage. How do you get better access to medicines to people that aren't able to otherwise get medicine? And so I think just, continuously traveling, continuously doing these projects, it just really kind of dawned on me that, water was an issue after this experience that I said in India. And that's kind of what really kicked off over the last 7 to 8 years of me building Sutro. But I was kind of like, I have this passion to help the world, to want to travel, to kind of fix these issues that are around there. And the best way of doing that is through science, entrepreneurship, and engineering, right? And so if I can build something, and if I can help scale that thing, then I might have a shot at solving this issue. And so that's kind of where the passion and inspiration comes from.
Fixing the world's problems.
Yeah.
That's really inspiring. Like, the traveling essentially broaden your horizon to essentially what's really going on. Like, you were in the thick of you got to see the different aspects. Like, I would say on my side, I have not traveled much. Like, I am that small town girl. Like, I am at home, so I see what happens around me locally, and I'm not trying to be ignorant to different areas. So I do want to learn more about when you were in your college days. Did it ever feel, I guess, intimidating trying to put those problems and find a solution, like bring them together and essentially offer them out and see if people were actually willing to help solve them?
Oh, yeah, 100%, right? Because failure is the norm. That's like every time you go out there, you're going to get 9 no's before you get 1 yes. Always. Like, whether it's with you starting a company, whether it's, me being in college and trying to figure out if these ideas work, odds are that you probably have the wrong idea and people don't want it. And so making sure that you're going to keep getting pushed down and making sure that you just keep standing up again over and over again and going, if you feel passionate about this and keep trying, is the real kind of motto here, right? And I have a ton of mentors that are 20 times, 100 times bigger than I am. And that's what they've told me, right? They're just like, look, you're going to find things that push you down. You're going to find ways and people that don't want to listen to you. Your goal is to get back up and keep trying again. And so, yeah, it was 100%. It was difficult because failure is the norm, right?
That is one thing that, like, I've noticed even with just going out and just experiencing life. I know at the teenage years, like anybody who is currently at their teen years, you feel like you are invincible. If you keep trying, you might really be. But there are some things that you will have to overcome some obstacles.
Yeah.
And it's just is what it is. It's like I think I read, like, if you're not experiencing some type of obstacle or challenge in life, you're not growing.
Yeah.
So what you have grown into is honestly really cool to see. Like, you talk about your journey and then I see where you are now. I really just want to pick your brain a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so one of the questions that I kind of like asking is, what do you look for since you are a CEO of a business? What do you look for in people that are, I guess, you're hiring on or looking to join your mission, your company?
Yeah. So when we hire, we always make sure that the person vibes with everybody in the company, right? Like, you can be a big university graduate, I've gotten all straight A's, whatever that is. We've hired people that are on book or on their resume really, really smart. And those are usually sometimes the first people to go, right? Because they just don't vibe with everybody there. And sometimes if you have a negative energy in the room, people don't want to work. Other people don't want to work with that person, right? And so if I was to give, advice to anybody that was looking for a job, definitely figure out, interview, even figure out on LinkedIn, like, who else works there, right? If you know that you're about to go into an interview with the CEO or the vice president tomorrow or in a week from now, backtrack, right? Starting today, you should be adding in the folks that you're interviewing with, whether you're going to be in the engineering area or if you're going to be in HR, whatever division you're going to be in. Figure out who the HR manager is, right? Add them on LinkedIn, send them an email and say, hey, can I grab a coffee with you tomorrow, right? You want to get to know that company so good by the time that you actually arrive at the interview, that the person that's interviewing you is like, man, you like already know what's happening here. Of course, I'm going to let you in these doors. So that'd be one kind of piece of advice, is you want to make sure that you vibe with everybody that's there.
Honestly, that's some pretty good advice, because what I'm noticing is a lot of people care about the culture, and I'm one of the people, I care about the culture of the company as well, because I I am not, I guess, the normal person you would see working. So it's more like I like things that are more accepting, and I can actually have a like real conversation with you. It doesn't always have to be
Yeah,
something superficial. So that's one of the things that is very important, because you spend a lot of time working and you want to be around like a good group of people.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like, even if it's something temporary for you, it kind of matters, because I've only had a couple of jobs that have affected me mentally,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't stay there that long. So I just, just left, and you find better. It really is better out there. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
so yeah, I really do think when what you said about, connecting with the HR managers, talking with the people that, might be at the company, getting a feel for what's there,
Mm-hmm.
is honestly really some really good solid advice, because it really gives the person an idea of what to expect, and if it's really something for them before they even, I guess, walk through the doors for an interview.
Exactly. And maybe there's other projects in that company that might be more interesting to you, right? If you just kind of know the lay of the land, you might just go in a little bit more smarter in that interview versus just, walking in that door without knowing anything.
So yeah, that's some solid advice out there for anybody currently looking at, even if you're at somewhere, just take a, I guess, a survey of what you're doing, and if this is something you want to do. What I have experienced for myself and heard from, like, my peers, when you have a, I guess, your mission and your goals align with a company that you join, is it's easier to, on that road to becoming fulfilled. Even if you don't want to stay at that company for a long time, if you want to venture into entrepreneurship, you get in somewhere and you kind of gain your experience, and you understand, I guess, the roles, that the different paths that you have to take, the experience that you need to do what you really desire to do. That's something that will truly help you along the way. I am the fan of, get your experience and get out if you need to.
That too. Exactly. Yeah.
So, what are some of your thoughts, comments, and concerns on the industry right now that you are currently in? Like, what do you notice that you want to address, or something that you're already addressing?
Yeah. The industry of water is extremely complicated, right? There's politics behind water. If you think about, the state of California, EPA, governments regulate kind of how much water is kind of used around the world. Um, there's people that kind of want it for different reasons, right? There's people that fight for water because it is a resource that's not available, right? It's not we just can't go and keep digging up for water all the time. There's like there's finite source of water. And then lastly, you have, like, with business and politics, you have the technology that comes in, right? So you have this trifecta, which makes it really, really complicated, because you have competing interests, you have a ton of people that can say one way or the other way in which to go. And so when you're really looking at the water market and kind of how to tackle it, you need to kind of know everybody and everything that's going on, because if you don't, then you could be blindsided and not know what you're actually trying to work on or what you're trying to sell. And so kind of how I'm going about that, or how I'm fixing it, is you just got to keep talking. You just got to be up all the time. You got to make sure that you're up on the news. You got to make sure that you understand what the different local legislation is, what the governmental legislation is at a federal level, and also at a global level, right? Because water touches some of the most important things. It's what we need to survive. We need to drink water. It's what grows our food, right? It's what we use to plant all this, all the things that we eat. It goes into making our meat production, cattle farming, pigs, chickens, and more importantly, it's our national resource that basically provides a lot of the water for the places that we live, right? You look at lakes, rivers, streams, mountains, and so it's a pretty big, big and important asset that has a lot of stakeholders and a lot of people that have their fingers on it.
Would you say like having a control of water is like as good as like gold or oil?
Probably, yeah. I mean, especially in the state of California, if some of these farmers have control of the water, I mean, they have control of gold.
Like I didn't realize how political that is. But then you hear all the situations where it's just like, hey, get the government involved to fix, filtration in cities like with Flint. I am honestly like, I guess, dumbfounded at the whole situation. Because mainly for me, I don't understand how hard it is to get clean water. Do you understand the struggle for it since you're kind of in the water business? Like what are some things that could potentially be blocking from actually having clean water or at least being able to help others resolve the issue?
Yeah. There's kind of two ways to look at that, right? So if you just look at water in general, right? Like let's just say, let's take Flint for an example. Um, the water, the problem in Flint was that there was lead that leached into the lines, right? And that lead is poisonous for people to drink. Why that happened is because somewhere upstream, people put different chemicals in the water, and those chemicals, which were actually chloramines, caused the lead out of the pipes to leach. And so it was fine yesterday and it wasn't fine tomorrow, right? So this change in water chemistry is what caused the lead to leach into the lines. And so water's just a really, really complex or a multivariate. It has many different variables that could go wrong with it based off of the people that touch it, right? Like another example for is, you see this in Florida a lot. You get these big sludge like algae sludges that happen in like the lakes, and that's because there's too much like fertilizer that goes off into the water, right? So what we're using to grow our food needs fertilizer. That fertilizer then runs off into the lake and it sucks the oxygen up, and then it causes this really, really nasty green sludge to start growing, or algae to start growing in the lake. So because there's so many things poking the balloon on so many different sides, there really isn't a one size fits all kind of solution for water, right? Which is why we created Sutro. We wanted that sensing element to first tell you what's wrong with the water so that you can then fix it. And so, yeah, that's kind of the answer of like, I wish I can give you like a simple answer. The issue is that it's such a complicated problem.
Look, water is as complicated as anything right now.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask more about Sutro. Is it more like a actual device that you would hook onto a pool and like the water constantly filters through, or is it something that you just, use to test the water, you take it out or whatever? So how is it set up?
Yeah, it's this robot basically at the size of my forearm. And it just floats inside there. So you don't touch it, you don't keep taking it in or out. As soon as you buy it, you set it up on the Wi-Fi and you drop it into your swimming pool. And then we have an app on either Android or Apple iOS that basically tells you what the chemicals are in your pool, and more importantly, what to do, right? So if you have to put in chlorine, you have to put in acid, it gives you a recommendation, it gives you a prescription of, hey, Shai, your pool is low on pH. Go ahead and add these chemicals inside there. And so you can directly follow those prescriptions, those recommendations. So you don't have to do the thinking of figuring out all this chemistry, what's wrong with my water, and you can spend the time that you do best of enjoying the water, right? Enjoying your swimming pool, not spending time on the chemicals.
Oh, that's amazing. So, see, I love a good thing that, that gives you the problem and the solution. So,
Yeah,
like being a network engineer, sometimes all you get is the problems, never the solution.
exactly.
So,
Yeah, we give you both.
That's a good package deal right there. So what are some of the most common issues that you see and I guess in the pools and the spas that you guys have your equipment in? Like what are some of the most common issues?
Some of the most common issues are people actually end up putting way too much chlorine in their pool, which they don't need to do. You can actually deal with the pool with much, much less chlorine. The other issues, I don't know if have you ever jumped in a pool and had your eyes burn?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's actually a pH problem. People think
Mhm.
it's chlorine. It's the pH. And so if you don't manage your pH properly, then your eyes will burn. And so we see that sometimes. The biggest problem actually that we've seen in spas and hot tubs are people put too much soap in their washing machine when they're washing their swim trunks, and the soap doesn't get washed off fully. So when they go and jump in the hot tub, it becomes like a bubble bath because all these like bubbles are coming out of their swim shorts. So that's a tip I have for people that are jumping into hot tubs. Make sure you wash your swim trunks with make sure it's fully washed and there's no soap on there.
That'll be something to definitely keep in mind.
Yeah.
So okay, so I want to learn more about, I guess, the technologies, if you're open with sharing, how Sutro works. And is it, since it's more, I guess, Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connected to your phone to essentially send you the information. So let's talk about the technologies. In general, there is a sensor that pretty much tells you what's wrong.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so what
Um,
happens after that?
the I should actually backtrack a little bit because the sensor itself is where most of our patents and our intellectual property is. Um, so have you ever used one of those test kits before where you take a little water and you put the little drops inside there and
Mhm.
you like look at the color? Um, so those test kits are what people use in a swimming pool today. What we've done is we've taken that test kit and we've shrunk it by 50 times. So
Oh,
we've taken something that's like the size of your finger and we've made it the size of your fingernail. So we actually do the exact same things that you would do as somebody that tests their pool, except for we have chemicals actually inside the robot, which is why I say it's a floating laboratory, because it's legit picking up a sample of water. It's putting in a really, really small dye inside there to change the water color. And then it's using computer vision to actually know what the color of that water is to understand the chemistry. And that's actually like the most complicated part. It took us a good 5 years to actually figure out how to build that part. Everything else, getting the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the app, that was like the simple stuff in Sutro. But the most complicated stuff was this microfluidics or really, really tiny fluids that we did to shrink this test kit down to really, really small droplets.
okay. So how long does like the test last, I guess, or does it continuously, kind of after you fix the problem, can you throw it back in there? Or do you change out, I guess kind of like that little stripper, if there's anything you
Yeah,
have to
yeah, we
essentially
do.
change?
You can think of it kind of as like a print cartridge. So when you have a print cartridge, you have so many pages you can print with it, right? So inside of the Sutro cartridge, there is preloaded with 100 tests of this liquid. And so after 100 tests, you basically have to change that cartridge. We test 3 times a day. So basically 1 month's worth of the cartridge is what you'll have inside of the Sutro device. Yeah, and you just leave it floating inside there because water chemistry changes all the time, right? So if you have your kid's birthday party on a Saturday, they're jumping inside there and you have 10 kids in that pool, your water chemistry is going to change on that Sunday, right? You're going to have low chlorine, your pH may be off. And so when the Sutro is floating inside there, it's kind of a real-time chemistry analysis that tells you what's wrong with your water because of you using it.
Okay. I'm wondering like the technology of those things because for one, I am so interested to know the process, mainly due to the fact of like, I guess prototypes going into production. Like, how was that? You said it took you guys a while to get the the sensor, right? So, do you want to talk about, I guess, the initial process, like what you guys kind of started off with? Like,
Yeah. So we whenever you build a prototype, you want to first functionally make sure that it works, right? You don't worry about generally the cost. You don't worry too much about how big it is, if it's gonna, fit in the nice form factor that it should be. You just want to make sure that it works. And so this is what's called a POC, which is basically a proof of concept. And a proof of concept tells you that the underlying physics or the underlying science of what you built actually works. What you do after that is you then, our first thing was probably about the size of my table. Like it literally was, the size of my dining table. It had all these little motors and pumps and tubes. No way could we have put that inside of a swimming pool. It would have just sunk to the bottom, and, it was really heavy. What you do after that is then you start talking to customers, right? This goes back to getting rejected 9 times and you get 1 yes. People tell you they don't need the product. People tell you they're fine with the way that they've had it. Sometimes you're just talking to the wrong people, right? You need to figure out that you're actually talking to the market or to your demographic that you actually need to be selling to, or the ones that are going to buy your product. After you kind of validate whether those people want it or not, then you go back to your prototype, your proof of concept, and you start to shrink it. You start to make it cheaper, and you start to shave away a lot of the fat, right? You start to figure out, how can I make this efficiently? How can I make this at scale? We did our manufacturing in China. So I spent probably about 30 or 40% of my first 2 years actually living in Shenzhen, China. We went back and forth multiple times, and I started learning Chinese. And so, we were there, and we were working with the Chinese team on how to best manufacture this product so we could make, first you make 50, and then you make 100, then you make 1,000, then you make 10,000, and then you can start to scale to getting to hundreds of thousands of units. And then comes all the logistics, right? So once you actually make the product, you got to put it on a boat. That boat from China comes across the Pacific, and it lands in Los Angeles at the port of San Pedro. And then it gets on a freight truck, and it trucks it to the desert, and that's where our warehouse is. Once it gets to that warehouse, there's the whole e-commerce website, right? You think it's so easy just to go on Amazon and hit the buy now button, and a package shows up at your door. There's so much that goes even just in that shipping side of it, right? You need to print out those labels. There's people that pick up that box, that put a label on it, that put it inside of another box and put a label to ship it to your house. There's postal people, there's tracking numbers. We have an entire customer service team that needs to make sure that if your order doesn't reach, or if there's a malfunction with it, that people can type with you. You can hop on a call and talk to somebody. You got to make sure that all parts of the operation are actually fully set, so that if the product ends up at a customer's home and they're unhappy, that you have some way to actually talk to them and fix the problem that they have. So yeah, that's kind of how you go from prototype to box delivered to somebody's doorstep.
I feel like a lot of people don't talk enough about the process.
Yeah.
It's a lot more. I think it's more so, I know we're in that age of, information. We expect everything instantly. We expect things to happen kind of like at the snap of a finger.
Mm-hmm.
But how long did it take you to eventually get to, I guess, the size of the product that you are now, that you guys have now?
It took us about 18 months to get there. So once you got the proof of concept and we got the actual science and technology done, when we started working with our partner in Shenzhen, it took about 18 months to get it to where it is now.
Okay. So I know we have to pivot into a little bit further.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, like, how can others get to where you are? Do you have any tips as to, simply like some steps that they can take to get to, I guess, a CEO level, or at least being able to branch off into having their own thing that they can contribute to society?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that somebody can actually do is if you're looking to be a CEO, is to understand how to use Excel right now, honestly. If you can understand how money works, how profit works, how revenue works, how you can, sell something for a particular amount and buy it for another amount, that's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, that's what a business is, right? You're buying and selling a service, a product, a technology. And if you don't have that core straight of just how does money work? How does money work in my business? You then can't run a business. And so that'd be my kind of tip initially. If you're like looking for a skill, is understand a balance sheet, understand Excel, understand how to work with numbers.
Let me ask, do you have a book you would recommend people to read?
If you want a really good book on entrepreneurship, I'd recommend The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. And if you're looking for more of kind of like a manual, I'd check out the Lean Startup by Eric Ries.
Okay. All right. So I'll make sure to include those in the show notes.
Yeah.
So let me go ahead and ask you, what would be a motivating and insightful quote that you would like to give to the listeners today?
An insightful quote that, man, where did I hear this? I think it's actually from like a basketball game, but I don't quite remember. But it's like you don't make the shots that you don't take, right? And so that kind of goes back to you're gonna fail 9 times and you're gonna get 1 yes. And so if you're just standing there on the court with the ball and you don't take that shot, then you're never gonna even have the chance of making it. And so that's just kind of one thing that I would tell people is if you have an idea, try it, because if you're going to sit in your room all day and be scared of what people tell you, then you'll have never made that shot.
I feel like if you saying being scared of what people, tell you or, think of you or whatever, that can prevent you from doing literally anything. Like you can breathe
Entirely.
wrong. So I'm definitely a big fan of going out and getting experience and just seeing what it's like and just verifying if it's something you really want to do for the long term, short term, whatever. Just take the step. Take the
Exactly.
step. I would like to thank you for coming onto the podcast. If you have any more closing remarks, like, where can the people find you? I know you listed your LinkedIn. I'll make sure to include that information in the show notes. If there's anything else, this was a great experience talking to you. I learned so much, in all honesty. Like, I feel like I need to go do my research some more about water. So that way I'm up to date. But I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast. And if you guys are listening, connect with Ravi, check out mysutro.com, and just get an understanding of the things that you want to do as well. Like, as he mentioned before, connect with the people at companies that you're interested in, or people that are just doing something that you want to do. We all love community. We all want to be around people that inspire us, help us grow. Don't be afraid to go out there and find it. Once you get into a community that loves to see you grow, it will change your trajectory of life. And I like to say that no matter what, it is a great experience to just get out there and just try it. At least you'll have no regrets at the end of the day. But
Exactly.
thank you guys for listening. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, thanks a ton for having me on the show, Shai.
All right. So this was the Be Insightful in Technology podcast, where we're here to help you gain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And tune in next week.